And you can give. Good afternoon, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me okay. There you go. Catherine was the important one. Catherine can hear me now. She's connected now. That's good. Right, so straight into it. We're going to do about pregnancy, not how to get pregnant, although I know that's an issue for some people. It was because we had a club manager ring us the other week, and he was quite indignant about the fact that one of his F&B people was pregnant, and she hadn't told him the second she suspected that she was pregnant. I'm like, okay, well, she doesn't have to tell you. The point being, you need to remember that it's not a personal thing. They're not really keeping it secret from you. When you get pregnant, you want to make sure that it is actually going to keep going, the pregnancy, and you don't necessarily want to tell everybody in case it doesn't. Usually people work on 12 weeks to let you know. Obviously, if they're having awful morning sickness, they will probably let you know before that, because there'll be a reason why they keep rushing to the loo at a moment's notice. But they are supposed to tell you, but there's no law against them not telling you. Okay, if you see what I mean. So you can't punish them, and they're not being nasty to you by not telling you. But once you know, even if they told somebody else who's then told you, you then know. So you then go and talk to them and say, hi, I believe that you are pregnant, and we do have a duty of care to make sure you're in a safe workplace. So you then need to be doing, sorry, and I think I might cough in a minute, so maybe Catherine or Liz can jump in a second. You do need to do a risk assessment. Now, with health and safety and risk assessments, you're supposed to do them every time something changes. So we all generally we do them every year, just check it hasn't changed every year. Obviously, with a pregnancy, it can change from month to month. So as soon as you know that somebody is pregnant, whatever their role is, you need to go through that risk assessment with them again to go, is this one going to be okay? Is there a problem with this? Are there any reasonable adjustments we need to make? Because pregnancy is a protected characteristic, you do as an employer have to make reasonable adjustments. That doesn't mean that you necessarily have to send them home on full pay for the whole of their pregnancy. That is not considered a reasonable adjustment. But for example, this F&B person wanted a stool to sit on behind the bar that they could also sit on while they were serving beer. Yeah, that's absolutely fine. It's then looking at things like carrying crates of drinks up and downstairs. You couldn't do that. Obviously, that seems fairly logical to me, but it also is quite interesting when you do this as to why are people carrying heavy crates of stuff up and downstairs, because surely that's fairly high risk anyway. Is there not a better way we could do this? We shouldn't. How heavy are those crates? Are we making sure they're under the 20 kilos you should be doing? Are we doing the manual handling training? I'm going to say it does bring up a lot more things in question as to why we're doing things other than the standard. I'm going to say we've always done it this way, so why wouldn't we keep doing it this way? Catherine, Liz, have you got any experiences with pregnancy through the other life stations you've been in?
No, not really, but just coming off that point that you had, Caroline, in the recent case that we had, they were talking about the employee going into the cellar and the lone working aspect of it, and tapping barrels. And I didn't realize what tapping a barrel would mean, but it actually is using a big metal mallet to tap the barrel. But obviously the other concern there is the employee going down into a cellar and the steps heavily pregnant. I think it's not just the weights, it's kind of the environment and where they are. So, you know, if you've got a tight bar and things like that, and they're bending down to get things, and steps, like I say, stairs into the cellar, never good. Pregnant woman, if she's going to be there working on her own, can that be avoided? It's one of the things that they hadn't really thought about. They were concentrating fully on lifting things and what she could and couldn't move. Interestingly, they still accepted that she could move barrels, but yeah, we kind of said no. And actually, one of the risks that they established from that was that it was possible injury to back, not anything else. And I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting for a pregnant woman to be moving a big barrel like that, and all you've thought about is, oh, it's going to may cause an injury to her back. But yeah, I think it's to be aware of the environment that they work in as well. If they're working in tight or confined spaces, or there are risks involved in going down to a cellar on their own and things like that. I think Catherine's got some good horror stories that she's been having a look at this morning, though.
I have been looking at some horror stories, but I'm not going to go into the actual stories with you, but I just pulled off, interestingly, what the most common tribunal cases are in regards to pregnancy discrimination claims. So obviously, an employee can claim pregnancy discrimination. And yeah, the most typical cases that the tribunal sees, and the first one is one that actually just happens more often than it should. I've had numerous calls about this. So refusal to recruit employees because they are pregnant. We have had so many times that we would get a call from a manager saying, I recruited so-and-so 2 weeks ago and she's pregnant. Say, okay, what advice would you like? Well, she didn't tell me at the interview. Okay, if she told you, would you have given her the job? Well, no, of course I wouldn't. Okay, get your checkbook out. Get your checkbook out, because that is the issue. You know, the fact you recruited her means she was the right person for the role, which means the only reason you would not have recruited this person is because they were pregnant. That is pregnancy discrimination. You cannot defend that. And you know, that builds onto what Carolyne was saying. They don't have to tell you at an interview, and actually that's why they didn't, because they wouldn't have got the job. So that's the most common case that the tribunal sees. Denying pregnant employees promotion opportunities. Now, think about how you advertise your roles. So if someone is on maternity, you shouldn't just forget about them for a year. If the only way you advertise your internal roles is to stick a notice up on the notice board, they're not going to see that. So they're at a detriment. Yeah. So you need to think, how do I communicate with my people on maternity leave? If especially a role that you think they might be interested in, email them, just say, just know we've got this role going. They can still apply for promotions and roles as usual when they're on maternity leave. Don't forget about them. And also likewise, the cases that go through is denying someone a promotion because they're pregnant. So I don't want to promote you to a manager because you're not going to be here in 6 months' time. I need someone that's going to be here, you know, continuity for the long run. So things like that can lead you in trouble. A very difficult one. So penalising staff because they're off due to pregnancy-related illness. Obviously, you've got to manage absence in the workplace. We get that. If you are putting someone for a absence process for absences related to their pregnancy, you are discriminating against them. Yeah. So always talk to us first. This could be anything from morning sickness to fatigue. And, you know, a lot of illnesses are unfortunately connected to pregnancy. If someone is continuously sick, obviously speak to us. And also, I won't go into too much detail, but if they are sick within 4 weeks of I think it's the due date, you can enforce that their maternity leave starts early as well. So there are options, but don't go in strong for someone off absence with pregnancy related. It's expected, unfortunately. Yes, it's a pain, but you just need to manage it. Otherwise, you can lead yourself in hot water. Enforcing redundancy or dismissing pregnant employees. Again, this is not to say you can't do it, but there are so many examples that we unfortunately see and that go through the tribunals of people using redundancy as an excuse to get rid of someone who's pregnant. Yeah. If it's a true redundancy and you go through the process, you can do it. We'll advise you of the risks. But if it is, sometimes it is so obvious you're just trying to get rid of that person because they are pregnant. Again, they end up in the tribunals and they're expensive. We mentioned risk assessments, so failure to undertake risk assessments and health and safety checks. And one that we've spoken about before lots of times is the derogatory and upsetting comments related to a pregnancy or childbirth or anything of that nature. there's lots of scary cases out there, but just to give you an idea of compensation. So as we know, discrimination is unlimited. Yeah, there's not a cap on how much someone can claim, but they assess the claim on 3 levels. So if there was a less serious case, compensation would be up to £10,000. Middle is between £10,000 and £30,000. And in the most serious cases, you look at between £30,000 and £50,000, although there are cases that have gone for a lot more. And I think I shared one, a receptionist at a GP practice was the highest payout ever received for a tribunal. So these are scary figures. And you know, it's all just about treating people fairly and consistently. But if you have got an pregnant employee, before you do anything, talk to us. Yeah, talk to us. And just make sure you know you're managing the pregnancy through. You're doing your risk assessments. You're keeping in contact with them, and yeah, you should stay tribunal for them.
Yeah, and the other thing you need to remember with the tribunals is that if it's at tribunal, it's a matter of public record, and none of us need on record that our organisation has discriminated against a pregnant employee. That is not a good thing for people to find on a Google search. So it's that, if nothing else, you've got the money as well, but it's also reputational damage you're going to have. Often there's a question from managers, business owners, well, now they've got them and they didn't tell me, otherwise I wouldn't have recruited them. Okay, that's a whole different issue. It's like, I'm going to have to pay them. It's like, well, no, every female who is pregnant has the right, no matter how long they've been with you, to have maternity leave up to a year. Okay, but they don't all have the right to be paid by you, the employer. Okay, so if they're under 26, and it says quite clearly in your maternity policy, if I wouldn't go read it now, read it when you get to when you have somebody, but it is and it's the most math-centered bit, apart from obviously holiday pay for casuals, which is also a bit of a nightmare, as Melanie knows as well. Is that it's 26 weeks before it's not the expected week of confinement, it's the qualifying week before that. Anyway, it's a thing, but at least if they haven't been with you for 6 months, once they've got pregnant, you are not going to be paying them. Okay, they will be getting money from the job centre, or whatever the equivalent of the job centre is now. Okay, however, if they do qualify to be paid by you, you are not out of pocket. You get back 103% of the maternity pay. The government pays you for being their paymaster, so you can get that 103% back. Your accountant will do that for you. I believe, having had to go into this with the club, that it's done via national insurance contributions, so that your employer contributions get reduced accordingly. So you get the money back that way. That's usually the easiest way to do it. But if you don't have any money because you are a small business, you can actually apply to have that 103% for the full 6 months of 9 months of payment to be paid in advance. Okay, so you wouldn't ever be out of pocket from that. It's not like you have to pay them the maternity pay and you have to pay somebody to take over while they're away. Okay, so that is the biggest thing that people worry about, is that I'm going to be out of pocket. You won't be out of pocket. In fact, you'll be in pocket for that. And if you have somebody who you kept the role open for, they are more likely to be loyal to you and hardworking when they come back, because they actually really appreciate coming back to an interesting job. As opposed to, and there's nothing wrong with it, going to work on the checkout at Tesco, which is always an option, but you know, it's nicer to do more interesting, more mentally challenging jobs. So just be aware that it's not necessarily a bad thing. And nowadays, as we all know, there is a shortage of staff. It is something that people cannot get 1950s about. You want the staff. Okay, the fact that they have children, yeah, okay, we need children for the next level of staff. I'm just wondering how politically incorrect I'm being here, but at some point we do need new people, otherwise they're not going to pay our pension when we get old. So, you know, we need to have people here. So we do need a few people getting pregnant, so otherwise it's not going to work. What other things? We've got the pregnancy. Most of our clients don't do enhanced pregnancy payments. They just do statutory. Which changes every April. So always, that's why we say just when you have a situation, then we'll work out how much money is due, because it does change every April. If you want to do enhanced, that's fine, but we would always put into the agreement, into the policy, that if you then leave within 3 months of the end of your maternity pay leave period, you would have to pay that extra money back. So it is a loyalty bonus, so you do have to go back to work again. I don't know, is there anything else I've missed from that, Catherine or Liz? No, I think that's it. Are there any questions on pregnancy before we go on to other questions? Nope. The thing being that it's not as scary as it needs to be, as people think it is. Just call us if somebody says a bit. And the thing is that you always okay, this is the trick bit. Okay, so if you are thinking of performance managing somebody, or even worse, dismissing somebody, you don't know that they're pregnant, you say, can I have a word? And they say, oh yes, I want to tell you something. Don't let them speak first. You speak first, okay? Because if they tell you they are pregnant, you cannot go ahead with the dismissal in that moment, because it will be seen to be a direct result of them telling you that they are pregnant. So if they say, oh, I've got some news for you, it's like, no, let me speak first. I'm really sorry, your performance is not very good. I'm going to have to dismiss you. And then they say they're pregnant. Okay, you dump them first. Okay, still not a great situation, but you did dump them first. If you let them say it, and we did have a lady who came to me and not a client, and said, I've got a claim for £5,000 because the lady had been with her for 3 weeks. 3 weeks, I mean, it is a nightmare scenario, wasn't very good. She called her in to have a word with her, and as the lady came into office, she said, I've got great news, I'm pregnant. And the woman unfortunately said, oh, yeah, well, congratulations, but I'm going to have to fire you. And I'm like, yeah, that would be a claim. So if you do have that situation where they've told you they are pregnant as you are about to give them some bad news, don't give them the bad news. Just go, oh, congratulations, when's it due? All that stuff, and then leave the room and come and talk to us. And then whatever the situation is, if you did want to terminate them for poor performance, we would make sure that you had all the paperwork supporting that it is because of poor performance, not because of the pregnancy. You probably will have to jump through a couple more hoops. It's not impossible to fire a pregnant person, but you do need to be aware that it's not going to be as straightforward as it would have been if you hadn't known about the protected characteristic. Okay, good. Any other questions today? I'm not sure how relevant all of that was for Tony, given the team that he manages, but normally Melanie Pointer has questions, but Melanie's disappeared. What was the other one that we were going to talk about? Settlement agreements. Right, so when we do settlement agreements, it's you're obviously negotiating on how much money you are giving somebody to give up their right to sue you. And that is usually the thing that we all spend the most time on, to make sure that that's acceptable to the organisation that's getting rid of the person, and to the ex-employee, that tax-free amount is okay. But what happens usually is that is relatively quickly agreed, and then they start coming back and disputing holidays. So it's just another heads up. Please make sure that you are absolutely on top of what holidays people have taken when, that is documented, that you have emails printed out where they've requested holiday and it's been approved, that all of that paperwork is in their personal file, or obviously in the computer in hard copy, but really clear, absolutely black and white. No, I might be thinking of taking holiday, and then they say, oh, well, yeah, but I didn't. You say, are you taking it or not? Yes, I am. Right, it's approved, 5 days holiday, these dates, done. So that you don't have to spend time at the final stage disputing whether they had 5 or 4 days holiday. Now, what we usually do, and this is what Liz has done today with the current settlement agreement we've got, is gone back and said, okay, if they'd rather have an extra day's holiday, that's fine, but holiday pay is taxable, whereas the gross amount isn't. And the final full amount that we're paying is not going to change. So if you want to have 1 day more, so £100 more taxable rather than £100 tax-free, that's your choice. But we are not going to increase the full amount we are doing by an extra £100. So that is what we've gone back with, and they'll probably go, oh no, I'll have it tax-free. But we do find that is the area that a lot of organisations are a little bit vague on, okay, because everybody's happy and it all seems to work and until it doesn't work, and then it's those things that people get really emotional about. The employee will get really emotional about. So if you've got it in black and white and you only need it for that year, obviously each year you'd be going, have they taken everything? Yes, tick, done. They're not carrying anything forward. I appreciate with lockdown there was a carryover. That carryover, just to reiterate, is only until the end of this year. Anything from 2020 that was not taken by the end of December this year has gone. So if you do have anybody who's still got that holiday, you need to tell them now they need to take it before the end of the year. Okay. Right, Kathy, not Kathy, I won't put Kathy on the spot. No, Catherine or Liz, what other horror stories do we have this year? This week?
I think, I mean, I'm not going to speak about it because I think we bring it up on a weekly basis, but lots and lots of contracts where obviously, you know, we provide you with your template to do the contract. Please do not delete, check. We highlight the sections for you to put stuff in, that's fine. Please do not delete clauses, change things, because you're actually voiding them. And we keep in now, we'll ask someone's contract, we say, literally, you're saying one thing here and you're saying the opposite thing here. And unfortunately, we're always going to tell you to go with the most favourable when you've got your contract. You know, and check them. You know, me and Liz had a contract, granted it wasn't one of our templates, but it was sick pay that said that the employee would get 4 weeks sick pay up to a maximum of £0. Obviously they was meant to put a figure in there, they haven't, and you know, me and Liz is saying you can't pay someone £0 for sick pay. They're just going to argue the head out of this, so it's not worth it. So yeah, it's mainly just contractual issues at the moment we're finding. I think there's lots of them.
And the key thing, as always with those, is that it's only when the relationship has totally broken down that they raise, this doesn't make sense. They don't do it when everybody's happy, when you could actually deal with it and sort it out. This is now a stage where the employee question is claiming constructive dismissal and and it's like, almost there isn't really anything you can do there that isn't going to end up as part of the claim, because either you're paying them or you're not paying them and they don't want to pay. It's just really messy, and it's just for the sake of actually paying. That isn't one of the wordings we use either. So up to a maximum of, we don't do that. It's either you get however many days, 5 days, 10 days, 3 months, whatever it is, full pay. We don't put any figures in there because then you have to update figures if their salary changes, etc., etc. So yeah. Right, Melanie Pointer. Sorry, you were away when. Oh, Tony, you've unmuted yourself. Yeah.
Sorry, just stepping back towards pregnancy. My current role is obviously course director, but I'm responsible for health and safety on the whole site. So when our communications manager announced that she was pregnant, she was working upstairs in the office. So we readdressed the risk assessment and made reasonable adjustments, and we've moved her downstairs with a nice comfy desk downstairs, so she hasn't got to climb stairs. So just I do get pregnancies, not literally.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, and she needs to maybe have, depending on how her ligaments are, sort of going into a lot of detail here, ligaments are and everything, she might prefer to have one of those balls to sit on as the pregnancy. So it's one, yeah. It's
correct. So we've looked.
Indeed.
Yes.
Yeah. Brilliant. Good. Melanie Pointer, do you have any questions?
Yes, I have a brief question. We had a little episode yesterday with somebody who was scheduled to work at one location because there was a clinic going on for the afternoon, and my manager was off and I was actually out on the road. So this was all transpiring as she was due to come into work. So basically, not long before that, she said she couldn't get to the location because one of the roads were shut and she couldn't go down it, and she didn't have enough petrol to go the motorway route. Could she go to a different location where there was already other staff? So the manager that was off, that she contacted, and she knew she was off, then said, well, you could go this way, that way, there's this, there's that, the other. But every time she made a suggestion, she said, oh, that's going around the sun to meet the moon, I can't go that distance, there's a ton of traffic, blah, blah, blah. So then the manager messaged me. I only said, well, look, tell her to take it as holiday if she can't come in. That didn't work. She took herself off to the other location where she wasn't rotated and worked those hours when and my manager couldn't sort it. She was off, and she was in today with my manager, and no one has said anything. I don't want to be overly difficult, but surely you can't do that. You can't. I've got this situation where it's like, well, I can't go there, I'm going to go to this location, but she wasn't needed there. There was a clinic running that needed to be overseen and reception, and you can't just go then to another. So there's 2 receptionists in one clinic and 0 in another. So you know, how do you deal with that?
Well, it's a disciplinary, isn't it? It's a refusing a reasonable management instruction. So once she didn't go to where it was, you were giving her alternatives of how to get there. She wasn't following them. She then went to another place to work where you didn't want her to be and you hadn't told her to be, and was not an option. So it's certainly a disciplinary for that. And actually, yeah, but it's
so the excuses she's using, which were, I don't feel safe. She doesn't like driving on motorways. I don't want to go down a country lane either. I don't want to do a country lane. I don't want to drive on the motorway.
She doesn't want to drive at all. Then I mean, they're
she'll
running
drive
out of
on
options.
She'll drive on certain roads that she's happy to drive on, otherwise forget it. And all the other options were too much petrol, or she didn't have petrol. So what I'm saying is that, are they valid excuses, or are they, you know, could you, if you said, well, that's unreasonable, can she say, oh, well, you've penalised me because I was anxious and I didn't want to drive on those roads, or you've penalised me because financially I didn't have the money to go on the motorway. You know, I just didn't want to get into that sort of discussion.
Okay, Liz.
Yeah, I could answer this one. It's an employee's basically an employee makes a choice of where they work. It's their responsibility to get to that location. It's not your job as an employer to say, oh, okay, you know, you can work elsewhere. You've already employed them and said they've got to get there. So me, for example, I live a while away from the office. I have an agreement and I have a discussion with my manager, Caroline, and we arrange, you know, if I can't come in, I phone and say I can't come in. What else can I do? There is that discussion, but I would follow the instruction. It's basically she's committed to you as an employee to come to work. Yes, you can try to support her, but no, there's no no obligation on you to get that employee to work. It's her responsibility to get to work, if that makes sense.
Right. I think
Not
it's
your
because
obligation to get it to work.
She didn't want to take it as holiday because she didn't want, I don't think she's got enough holiday accrued, therefore it would be unpaid leave. I don't think she wanted to not be paid. And this was the problem, which is why she took herself off somewhere else to say, well, I did the hours anyway, I went somewhere else.
How much notice did she have for going to that location now? It wasn't like you phoned her like
no,
2 hours before.
It was at least the rotas are done weekly. So no, it was.
She has enough time to work that out. You know, it's like me. I know if there's a train strike, I know I've got to make an alternative arrangement, or if I'm stuck somewhere, I have to make that arrangement. So she's got notice. It's not like you're dropping it on a couple of hours before. And even like you say, if there was a road work, you know, they've got Google Maps nowadays. You've got sat navs. You know, it's not for you. There is a cost of living issue, obviously, petrol and things. You know, maybe that she would throw in as mitigation if you did choose to discipline her, and she doesn't want to waste petrol, but she should have considered that. It's not your obligation to get her to work. It's her responsibility to get herself
This isn't
to
the
work.
first time, by the way, that there's been I'm not doing this categorically, but I think it was my manager was concerned the way that she'd said it, as in, I can't do this. It wasn't even a sort of a discussion as in, well, okay, maybe I'll think of this. It was very, I'm not doing it. And we've had that before from this person, as far as, I can't work that time and I really can't do this, and I'm only doing this, and you know, that type of stuff. This is not the first episode.
I think you need to get her in then for an investigation, Mel, to be honest, and just say, look, you know, we've got this, you know, let's say it might be that you work through it together and you reach a resolution. But you need to get it in, you need to get it documented, because if she's just point blank refusing, I mean, I'm sure that when you employed her, she knew where the locations of the clinics were, and she knew that she would be, I'm assuming the contract says this location or that location.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Okay, so she's breaching the contractual terms anyway. But I think
Okay.
obviously with the petrol and things like that, I am aware that there are employees who are traveling to work, and if there, there is a deviation, everyone's concerned about that. So, she may throw
The strange
that
thing
in as
is the
mitigation.
location that she was meant to go to is nearer to her home. She just didn't want to go because she said the road was blocked, which meant she'd have to drive down a country lane, which she didn't want to do.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, well, as Caroline said, you need to bring her in. You need to have that investigation. She hasn't done what you asked her. You did give her an alternative, but she didn't do. She took it on herself. She's not her own boss. You are an employer. So the more you let her do this, the more it's
Yeah.
going to become custom and practice for her to do that.
I
How
think
long's she
that's what's
been with you?
happened. Well, she was the kickstart person, then she went off, and then we restarted on a different contract in probably 3 months ago, 3 or 4 months ago.
Okay, you need to bring it in hand before it gets any further then, because especially with the winter months coming in, those country roads are going to get icy. She's not going to be wanting to travel down there. I mean, there's always public transport. I get all over the country on public transport. So, if she doesn't want to drive, put that to her as well. And if she doesn't, she's doing herself out of a job, isn't she? Because those are your locations, those are the requirements of the
Yeah,
the
and
role.
we did need her in the other location. We had a new member of staff that needed support. So yes.
Yeah. So it's had an
okay.
impact on everything. I think, stress in the meeting that you have with her, the impact that she is having on the rest of the business, because like you said, that person was left on their own that time as well.
Exactly. Thank you. I'm going to have an interesting week. What with the other one as well. So that's good.
Have you not done that yet? No.
I'm waiting till Friday. Tomorrow.
That'll be an interesting update next week.
Yeah.
But yeah, bring her in hand, Mel, as soon as you can. Like I said, she's been there 3 months. She's calling the shots. There are alternatives. Like I say, I've worked all over the UK, and I don't drive, actually, surprisingly enough, but I can get anywhere by public transport. The networks are so good nowadays, no matter where you are. So her anxiety about driving shouldn't restrict her from coming to work. She's accepted the job and she's accepted the locations of your practices.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Good. So that was pregnancy. If you need any details, we have a pregnancy info sheet in the normal Dropbox where the Zoom recordings are. So we'll put that up after this call as well. Any questions about that? If you do have anyone who's pregnant or any other issues, obviously give us a call. I will not be here next week. I'm going on holiday. Yay! Yeah, so that's good. So I'm going on the Queen Mary 2 to New York, transatlantic, and then 3 days in New York. So I will miss you all, obviously, for 2 weeks, and then back at the beginning of December. But obviously, I'll leave you in the capable hands of my team, who obviously are very happy to see the back of me and are not at all envious in any way, shape, or form that I'm going. And yes, any questions in the meantime, everybody just get in touch with us. Otherwise, everybody, we'll see you next week back on the call. Okay, bye.